years ago. You know that 3,337 years ago. That's a long time. Many enemies have risen up against us over the ages and disappeared. And we have prevailed, carrying the torch of the belief in one invisible God, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. So chapter 20, let's, if you can read the Hebrew, good. If you can't, you can read the English. Hashem, I'm told, speaks English. Lam Natseya Mizmer David. This is a psalm written by King David. Yancha Adonai b'yem tzara. Hashem should answer you on the day of your distress. Yisagev Hashem Elehei. Yankev, the God of Jacob, should support you, give you strength. Yishlach Ezra should send you help. Mikaidesh, from the holy chamber in the Beis Hamikdash. Umitziyan, from Yerushalayim, Misadeka, he should support you. Yizker kol min chaisecha, he should recall all the flower offerings that you brought, your devotionals that you brought to the Beis Hamikdash to express your gratitude and your appreciation that we have a connection and relationship with the living God. And he should remember the burnt offerings, the animal offerings, which cost more than flour. And he should grant your heart's requests. And when you bring an offering and you ask for something, you also have to do something to deserve it. So Hashem should enable us to be able to fulfill our good resolutions. And then we will be able to rejoice b'shuasecha in your salvation, Hashem, u'b'shem ad Eloheinu nidgel, and we will be able to raise the banner of our God on high. Yamale Adonai kol mishalei secha, Hashem should fulfill all of your heart's requests. Ata yodaiti, now I know, says King David, Ki Haishia Adonai Mashiach, that Hashem saves his anointed one. In every generation, there is one person who is qualified and capable of leading the Jewish people and being the Mashiach. And Hashem saves him from all kinds of dangers and challenges. And King David knew this in his own experience, as his life was saved many times. Now I know, he says, Ki Haishia Adonai Mashiach, Hashem saves his anointed one. Yanehu Mishmei Kodshay, answering him from his holy heavens. B'guvures, with might. Yesha, salvation. Yemine, from his right hand. They have risen up against us with their chariots and with their cavalry and their modern day equivalents. We go with the name of God on our lips. They stumbled and fell. We are standing strong after all these years. We did not give in. Like Mordechai from the Megillah did not bend his knee, did not bow down to Haman. We do not bow down to the Hamans of our exile. Hashem should deliver us. He is our king. He should answer us on the day that we call. We're learning Tanya. We're up to chapter 11. In brief, we've discussed, not in brief, we've discussed at length, 3 different categories, soul categories of Jewish people. A congregation, the word for a congregation is a tzibur. The word tzibur is made up of 3 letters, tzad, tzadik, beis, and resh. Do you speak Hebrew? Read Hebrew? No.
I can read.
You can read. You know the letters?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay. So the second letter of the aleph base is what? Wait, take a guess. Base. Good. Very good. Very good. I see you catch on quickly. Tzaddik is actually a word of a righteous person, but it's also a letter. It's pronounced like it sounds. Tzad. So we have tzaddik, we have a base, and we have resh. Resh means the head, and it's one of the later letters in the aleph base. Together they spell the word that's called tzibur. The tzibur means a congregation. Each one stands for a category, a spiritual category of the Jewish people. The tzaddik stands for the righteous person who his whole life is filled with goodness. He has much deeper, higher challenges than ordinary people. And he's on a much higher level than ordinary people. And there are very few tzaddikim. We learned in the first chapter of the Tanya that there's a tremendous repository of souls where they're all kept. Where are all the souls? Before people were born, where do you think your soul was? Where was it? Floating around in outer space? Where was it? Hidden in the chromosomes of your parents? Where was it? So our mystical traditions tell us that just like everything, remember this is our first class. Remember the first class? Everything in the world has a body and a soul. That's my body, my soul, you can't see it. But without it, I'm just like a piece of wood lying on the floor, lying on the sidewalk. It's my life, okay? And life, there are many levels and divisions. And of all these levels and divisions, there's one level that's very, very special, which was given to every single one of us, which is called the neshama. The root of the word neshama is breath. A breath is a neshima. When a person faints, what do? They put a feather underneath their nose to see if they're breathing. Because breath is the sign of life. As the Torah tells us quite clearly, Hashem breathed a living soul into the nostrils of Adam, the first man. It's not an allegory, it's a reality. Okay? So, the tzaddik lives on the level of his neshama. Very high level. He thinks righteous things. He says righteous things. He does only righteous things. He doesn't do any bad things. So it's not like the popular term about somebody who's a nice guy. Oh, tzaddik is there. Tzaddik. He keeps Shabbos sometimes. Tzaddik. He eats kosher food. At home, at least. Maybe not always. There's a lunch. That's not a tzaddik. A tzaddik doesn't do anything in violation of the prescriptions of the Torah. There's a story. They got a tremendous new thing in the office, a copy machine that would do everything, even make your coffee for you. It would do everything. And guy, a new machine, starts playing with it. He doesn't know what to do. There's a sign attached. If all else fails, read the directions. You ever had that experience? It happened to me. The Torah is our directions for life. The word Torah means instruction. It also means light. It's illumination. It's a light in the darkness of life. The Torah is called light, and the instructions are the manual for a perfect, beautiful, holy, wonderful life. But, to keep all those instructions and not make a single mistake, well, not so. It takes a lot of learning and training to know all the ins and outs and all the tricky details, but they're all good. They're all holy. You want to be a holy person. You want to be a good person. These are the directions, and they're very important. Just like any athlete has to know exactly the directions, the things that he must do or she must do to train, and the moves they have to make, and everything to become, like this woman who won so many gold championships in the Olympics this last year. What's her name? Simone something or other. She, unbelievable. I saw what she did, and it was unbelievable. She didn't get there just because she felt like it. She had to train and train and train for years and years and years. So similarly, spiritually, it's even more exacting because, you know, with a slight look, you can blow it. Everything counts. So the tzaddik stands for the righteous person. The base of the tzibur, base, which letter of the aleph base? Which one? Again, you remember? Number 2. Base stands for Beinoni, the average person. Only the average person of the Torah isn't so average. In fact, in the eyes of most ordinary people, they would think he's righteous. He looks righteous. She looks righteous. They appear righteous. They behave righteous. They do everything righteous. Why aren't they tzaddikim? Well, that's what we're going to find out. That's what this book is all about. This is a book of the average person. It's for everybody, but it's not both. It's not your average Joe or Judy. It's a book for very high achievers. I know when you were a little girl, your mother told you were a high achiever. You got put in the high achiever class. That's why you ended up here. You see, it's your mother's fault. She knew that you were special. And then there's the resh. What's the resh? The resh is the last letter of the word tzibur. Resh sounds like and it stands for a wicked person. But a wicked person is not a criminal. I mean, criminals are wicked people, but not every wicked person is a criminal. Most people who fall into this category of Rishayim, which are called wicked people, are really very righteous people, but sometimes they make a mistake. They forget to do something. They sleep in. They don't pay their bill on time, lose their temper, eat something they're not exactly supposed to because it was so good. It looked so delicious. My mother used to come home, Aliyah Shalom, used to come home from a wedding and say, I never should have had that Viennese. I knew I shouldn't have had it. So, but that's what you said last time, Ma. Yeah, I know. Those are ordinary people, but they break laws because it's very hard. The Torah has a lot of laws, 613 commandments, and every one of these commandments has mountains of derivatives, mountains of details. And the tzaddik knows them and keeps them and devotes himself. He's like the shepherd. The tzaddik is the shepherd of the king. And the Jewish people we are the sheep. We're the flock. So the great leaders of the Jewish people were all shepherds. King David was a shepherd. Moses was a shepherd. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were shepherds. The Jewish people that went down to Egypt were shepherds. Pharaoh said, what do you people do? He said, we're shepherds. This was not good news for the Egyptians. They worshiped the sheep. And we took a sheep on Pesach. We slaughtered it. That was like civil war. In fact, it was civil war. That's why we left Egypt. They wouldn't eat with Jewish people because Jewish people are sheep and our leaders are shepherds, are tzaddikim. And amongst the shepherds, there's it says that Hashem looked into, so where are all this? Everything has a body and a soul. Spiritually, there's such a thing as a spiritual body from which all the physical bodies, everything has a spiritual source. So our being also has a spiritual source. And our souls also have a spiritual source. So now imagine not just a body and a soul, imagine a spiritual body and a spiritual soul. So where are all those souls? Well, I'll put it in very simple terms. There's a place where all the souls are kept, and they're called the body. They're kept in the spiritual body. Now, to illustrate this idea, I once saw a painting in my youth when I traveled around looking for the truth. And I went to a lot of museums and I saw a lot of paintings and things like that. There was a painting by a man called Bruegel from Netherlands, I believe, Holland. And he did some extraordinary painting. He must have learned mysticism. There was a person lying on a bed, He was dead. And there were two diaphanous beings picking him up. So even as he was lying there, he was being picked up. That is to say, his spiritual life was an image of himself, but it was a little bit diaphanous. You could see through it. And they were picking him up, and they were carrying him up. And ahead of them were two more angels, and they were carrying the same guy, only he was more diaphanous. And then two more and more and more, and they got less and less physical and more light. Just forms of light. And they were all going up in this painting into a kind of a vortex of life at the very top. And they went into this light, and actually you could see them disappearing into the light until you couldn't tell the difference between them and the light. I once had a student who came to eat with us. He became a big professor. He was studying physics. And he said that there was one experiment that they did once where they had this oven that was so hot, unbelievably hot, and they had this metal material that could be inserted through an opening into this oven, and you could see what happened to it. And as it went in, it became hotter and hotter and hotter, and you could see this rod becoming red hot, and then white hot, maybe blue hot, and I don't know what other kind, until it became invisible. It became part of the fire. It just merged with the flame, and it was invisible. It was in the flame, it was part of the flame. It was burning like the sun. The sun, the source of energy in the sun and the fires in the sun, are they different? They're all one thing, they make up the sun. And then you pull it out, you say, no, it was a whole rod. So that's a physical image of what I'm just describing to you, that these angels and the spiritual soul disappeared into the light. They disappeared. So we have now a concept of a spiritual body, and just like you have a body and a soul, so there's a spiritual body that contains spiritual souls. And it says on the very first chapter of the Tanya that Hashem, before he created the world, well, what's time to Hashem anyway? I don't know. We don't know what's before and after. Time wasn't even created yet. Time is also a creation. Just like wood is a creation, and stones are a creation, and the moon and the sun and the stars are creations, time is also a creation. Created. It says in the Torah how it was created. There was evening and there was morning. It was one day. That's the beginning of time. So before time, it says that Hashem, our sages, gave over this tradition to us. This is the source of mystical knowledge in Judaism, that Hashem looked into the great spiritual soul, where all the souls were being kept, which is really called a body, the great spiritual goof, where goof is Hebrew for a body. So he looked into the goof where all the souls were, and he saw that the tzaddik stands for the righteous one. There weren't many. There were not many. There were very, very few. What's he going to do? If he's going to put too many in one generation, there's going to be a lot of tzaddikim in the generation of Abraham. What's going to be for after that? Just wicked people. So therefore, he took them very carefully, made sure there was at least one of these great righteous people in every generation. And if that person is not in the generation can't survive, won't survive. And we have in the history of mankind, the Torah tells us about who they were. 10 generations of tzaddikim from Adam to Noah. Noah, the world went corrupt. Noah saved the world. Whoever was going to survive had to get with him on the boat. And then there was further corruption for another 10 generations. And the Torah tells us who were the leaders of those generations. Righteous people. Like Job was one of the righteous people, one of the later righteous people, 20 generations now into the creation. And then came a great spiritual giant who was abandoned by his family because there was a king that the stargazers said there's someone very dangerous just being born, and he's going to overthrow your kingdom. And his chief spiritual advisor, you know, the big spiritual honcho, the Pope of the time, so to speak. It was his son. And he abandoned him so that the soldiers wouldn't kill him. He just left him, said, if he's meant to survive, he'll survive. And he survived. And he looked around at the world that he found himself in. And he wondered, where's it all coming from? I'm sure you heard the story when you were children. Maybe your Sunday school told you the story. And he saw that everybody likes the sun. So things grow when the sun shines on them. So maybe that's the source of life. So he said, that must be the source of all life. So we have to devote ourselves to the source of all life. But then he saw that the moon came up and pushed the sun away. So the moon was obviously stronger than the sun to push it away. But then he saw that the moon changed. It became smaller, and then it became bigger. The source of life can't change. Life has to be constant. And so he realized that there had to be something higher than both the sun and the moon. And that's how he actually discovered the idea of an invisible God. And he lived in an age of idol worship. His father had a huge factory, a very successful business. It was called Idols Are Us. And people used to bring him money, and people used to bring food for the idols and offer this food to the idols and ask the idols to grant their requests. That their business deals should go through, that their wife should have children, and so on. And he said, why are you bringing this food for the idol? He said, well, it's going to pray for me. He says, you think this child's going to pray for you? My father just made it last week. My father made it. How can you pray to it? And so he decided to teach everybody a lesson. One day his father left him in charge of the business. And a lady brought a plate of food. And he took the plate of food and he placed it in front of a big idol. And then he took a big stick and broke all the other idols. A fortune. His father came home and he saw it was a mess. Millions of dollars worth of idols were broken. He said, what did you do? What's going on here? He says, I didn't do anything. So what do you mean you didn't do anything? Look, what do we got here? He says, Ta, you don't know it was terrible. It was a big fight. This lady brought some food. It smelled delicious. Everybody wanted it. And the idols had a big fight over it. And this big idol won. He smashed everybody. So you sent me to believe that? He said, well, doesn't everybody believe it? He realized this fun son of mine is a troublemaker. He is you know what an icon is? It's an idol. Iconoclast is the first one who broke the idols. That was Abraham. He was the first idol smasher. So he took him to Nimrod. And he said to him, I think my son, what am I going to do? I think my son is not with the program. And Nimrod said to him, well, why don't you believe in the idols and the gods? He says, I only believe in an invisible God. He is the God of the heavens and the earth, and he's greater than everything. He's the source of all life. And Nimrod said, well, I believe in the God of fire. We'll see who's greater. And he made a furnace, red hot furnace, and he took Abraham and he threw him in. And it was a see-through. You could see what was going on inside. And after a few days, they saw there's Abraham's walking around. And he's got company. He had company. And the fire didn't burn him because he had self-sacrifice for the name of God. He was higher than the laws of nature, and the fire didn't burn. And who was with him? They were angels, were with him in the fire. When Nimrod saw that, he was ice. He couldn't take him out. It was so hot that the servants who made the fire themselves got burned up. So Abraham had a brother, and they asked him, whose side are you on, Nimrod or Abraham? He said, well, we'll see. If Avram survives, I'm on his side. And he gets burned up, well, then I guess Nimrod is right. So when Avram came out, he said, no, this was the father of Sarah. Avram married her. He said, I guess I'm on Avram's side. Look, he survived this test. He beat Nimrod. So I said, okay, they threw him in. He burned up like a stick, like a match. So how come Avram survived and he didn't? Because Avram didn't say, we'll see who's who. He didn't need any tests. He believed in God. He believed in the one invisible God. This is what we are. This is our heritage. This is what it's all about, okay? So Hashem looked into the source, the goof, the spiritual goof, the spiritual body. The goof is a body in Hebrew. He looked at the spiritual goof, and this is where all the souls were for forever and ever. All the souls that would ever be created, God created the soul. Says one of the prophets tells us, Neshamas ani asisi, God says through the prophet, I have created souls. And Hashem looked into the repository of all these souls called the goof in heaven, the heavenly goof. Not that heaven is a place you can go there and pick out a soul for your child. If you want a good soul for your child, you have to do a lot of good deeds and learn a lot and do a lot of help people a lot. And you can merit to have one of the holier versions of the godly soul. And he saw that there weren't too many, so he set one up in every generation. And that's what we learned. And when they come down into bodies, so we have to have the highest order of the souls are the tzaddikim. And the average people are the beinanim, who are almost tzaddikim. But that almost is as wide as the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean and the Arctic Ocean and Antarctic Ocean, all lumped together. It's even bigger than that. The distance between the Beinani and the Tzaddik is greater than an ocean. And then between the Beinani and the Rishayim is not so big an ocean, but it is also a pretty big gap. And together they make a congregation. We have to have all of them. And because we have to have all of them, we know that we have to love our tzaddikim because they are our connection with, our highest connection we have with God. The tzaddikim, it says in the Torah, the tzaddik walks with God. They walk with God. The tzaddikim are like, if God wasn't a human being, he would be a tzaddik. You'd say, oh, he's a tzaddik. He does the things that God would do if God was a human being, which of course he's not. He's God. And the Beinani is a close version, struggling to be a tzaddik, but no, doesn't make it. Doesn't really make it. But he's trying his hardest all the time, and it's a spiritual battle raging within his own heart, because he's plagued with temptations. Every kind of temptation you can't even imagine. The temptations can be so subtle. Let's call them temptations of the ego, because as long as there's ego, there's no room for God. Your ego doesn't leave room for anybody else. Your ego says me. Your ego worships me. Me worshiper, me generation. And then there's the Yerushalayim, the ordinary people who they do worship themselves, and they do give in, and they do make mistakes, but they're good people. They're basically good people. That's the book of the Beinani. That's what we're up to now. And what we're going to discuss in this chapter, if you're with us for a few more classes, I hope you'll. How many classes are you here for? Kennedy?
I'm here for 2 weeks.
2 weeks, great.
I'm here for 1 week.
Okay. What's your name again? Remind me.
Abby.
Abby. Okay. I'll get it. Excuse me. Just take a sip. I said a blessing downstairs, okay? And together, we have to have all three. We want to be attached to the tzaddik. We hope that we can achieve the level of a Beinoni. So obviously we have to have warm attitudes towards both of them. And Rishayim are just ordinary people who make mistakes. And there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of levels, depending on the different variables that make up a human character. And that's what we're going to learn about now. And we really have to have attitudes, and this is why Hasidism emphasizes love of one's fellow, because we're all dependent on one another. And we can't afford to be exclusive, because if we say somebody, you don't belong here, then we're not a tzibur anymore. We're not a congregation. And we all have the same Father, and we all have the same goals, okay? And now we learned on the very first page of the Tanya that there are these many categories of souls. There are, in the level of the Rishayim, of the wicked ones, there are wicked ones. Well, let's start with the righteous ones. There are righteous ones who have good, and there are righteous ones who don't have good. And what does that mean? They said, well, they have good lives. Some righteous people, they're not only righteous, but they have very, very good lives. Everything goes right for them. And then we have righteous people who don't have such good lives. They suffer. They get put in concentration camps. And they're good to people in the concentration camps, but they suffer. Or they have tragedies in their family. Rabbi Yosef Cairo, who wrote the Code of Jewish Law, an amazing tzaddik, lived 500 years ago. He was expelled from Spain in the Inquisition. He ended up in Turkey, and from there he ended up in Sfas. He compiled from the Oral Torah the Code of Jewish Law. I don't know how many children he had, 12 children, something like that. They died one after the other. So a tzaddik who suffers. And then we have on the opposite side of the coin, we have the wicked people who have good. That's wicked people, mafia people who lead good lives. They got, a place in Miami and a place in Jerusalem and a place in Brooklyn, and they have 5 cars, and they have good lives. Not so good. It's really not so good. But it looks like you could think they have good lives. And then there are wicked people who don't have good lives. They really suffer. They're real criminals. Or more on the spiritual terms. What do these terms all mean? And then you have the Beinoni who have both good and bad. They have good and bad. That's the Beinoni. So to understand this, page 165, you have to understand these different things, they correspond one to the other. So that the wicked person who knows good, he's the opposite counterpart of the tzaddik who knows bad. So you have a tzaddik who has a bad life, and on the other side we have a wicked person who has a good life. Are they the same? No. But they're different, they're similar in the terms of their categorization. And now we have to understand that the time for the class is like up now, but all this plays itself out, not just in the physical world, but in spiritual terms. So the tzaddik who has good means he's a very good person, and his good is a spiritual good that goes higher and higher and closer to God and holier and holier. And the tzaddik who has bad doesn't necessarily mean that he's persecuted. Nazi criminals are going to come and cut off his pay. I know a person, he told me his grandfather, they came to cut off his payas. And he said to them, you want to cut off my payas? Take my hand, cut off my hand. instead. Don't touch my payas. That's tzaddik. Tzaddik. Is that a tzaddik who is bad? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a tzaddik who has bad means the tzaddik who has bad means that in purifying his struggle to be a holy person, there were certain inclinations that he had which were not holy, and he transformed them to good, but there was a trace, a minuscule trace left from what was from before. Sort of like, to give you an example, you go to a wedding and you're wearing a beautiful off-white blouse and some tomato sauce spills on your blouse. Oh no, it's the first time I wore it. You take it, take it to the cleaners, and they said, well, we'll clean it, but I don't know if we can ever get it just like it was again. There's always some remnant hint of a stain, a hint of a hint of a hint of a stain. So spiritually, there's still this hint of what a tzaddik was before he became a tzaddik, and that's the bad that's still in him. It didn't become good, because the ultimate tzaddik transforms every bad thing into good. Okay, so that's what we covered today. Know what it means, a tzaddik who has good. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have a connection with such a person? Wouldn't that be a great thing? Get a blessing from a tzaddik who has good. A person whose every single look is an expression of holiness and goodness. There was a tzaddik, Rabbi Yisroel of Rizhin, a descendant of King David. They said he didn't blink his eye, that it wasn't part of his service of God. He didn't blink. It didn't have a meaning, a purpose. One of the things we have to be careful to do and not slip up with, hi, Andreas. Nice to see you online. Here, say hello, ladies. We have new girls in the class. This is Andrea. She's in New Jersey. We have to say a blessing after we enjoy something like a cup of coffee. Remembering to say a blessing after you eat is one of the hardest things. Conquering evil is not necessarily like in a tournament, the knights joust. They run at each other on horses and try and knock the other one off. It's remembering to say the blessing and not getting up and walking away because the class is over. But sometimes you have students who remind you. Have a wonderful day, girls. Good luck. Welcome to the class. You enjoy it. And you know, there's some girls who have been here for weeks, months, and sometimes even a year. They're all kind of moved in for a started at the same time.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, she told me. That's wonderful. I think I have the same experience. I can understand how you feel.
What? So I'm Abby. Nice to meet you. Are you guys in level 1? Yeah. Level 1 for everything. Nice. Yeah. You need anything, you know? I'm Abby. You need anything else? Nice to meet you. Allison? Yes. Nice to meet you. I said Allison. Yes. I'm Kennedy. Nice to meet you, Allison. Nice to meet you. need handouts, but she'll give them to her. What? Yeah. I'm not either. Okay. What else not? I wrote some engagement from someone, and so I'm staying